Hi, so I'd like to talk about different terminology in narcissism. There are lots of words that we use quite often in narcissistic abuse that a lot of people would not understand. Words like trauma bond and codependency and gaslighting and flying monkeys and triangulation. So words like that, I'll try and use examples of my own life and then try and explain to you what the actual word means, and hopefully then you can understand and try and put it in context with your own issues that you may be having. So if we talk about triangulation, I did mention that in one of my other videos. Before I go on, please subscribe to my YouTube video. I'd love you to share the videos with other family and friends and other people who may benefit, and post them online if you can. That would be amazing. I'd love to have more subscribers, obviously, and that would be amazing if you could just share the information, and hopefully it might help other people if they're struggling with their own issues as well. Ultimately, that's my goal, is to try and raise awareness, spread, teach people as much as possible, educate people, educate children in schools, educate the community. There are sort of all over the world, when I went to Pakistan, the women there are struggling so much. There are so many victims all over the place, and abuse and narcissism is so rife that we need to spread as much awareness as we can, educate people and teach them about these things so that they can try and help themselves and try and avoid these kind of relationships, so they're not left trapped and suffering for years. So that's my main goal. So please subscribe to my YouTube channel, please spread the news, please share online, share with family and friends wherever you can. Thank you very much. Right, so shall we start with triangulation, which I touched on in my last video. Triangulation is creating a triangle with relationships. So say, for example, the narcissist abuser with yourself and with one other person. Sometimes it's more than one people, and this other person can vary. So it can be another female interest or male interest if you're a female, or it could be a child, or it could be a relative, it could be a friend, it could be a colleague, it could be anybody. So I think in my previous video I was talking about my sister and my son, so here I'll talk about other female interests. Because when I met Mike, the covert Narc, the second husband, he made it out. I mean, he's a very good looking guy, he's very charming, he's very, everybody loves him. But he would constantly be bringing in other women. So it'd be constantly throughout his youth, throughout his young adult life, even current situation, he would say that wherever he goes, girls just flock at their feet for him. They just absolutely love him to bits. He was meant to be studying at college in Birmingham, and there was a receptionist there, an Asian good-looking receptionist, that apparently fancied him so much that she would fill out his application forms for him and do everything for him. He'd go to the bank, there was another Asian girl at the bank, she fancied him, would do everything for him. School girls at bus stops would be fancying him and trying to flirt with him, wherever he went, on the bus, at work. Customers would come in, if he went to different shops of wherever, in Pakistan, obviously, in Pakistan the whole of Abbottabad fancied him, and I would sort of say, I'd laugh actually and say, does the whole city fancy you? Because the stories never stopped. It was non-stop. The girl next door, in the house next door, she fancied him. She wore, they're called payal, which you wear on your feet. It's like necklaces for your feet, or bracelets for your feet. And she would go on the rooftop, I think, and she would jingle her payal so that he could hear, so he'd look out the window at her. Or, wherever he went, girls were flocking. He had girlfriends at the university that he worked at. Girls were trying to bribe him with sex and, selling themselves or whatever, to get good grades, because he was in charge of printing out the certificates, the degree certificates. So apparently girls quite often would offer him relationships and free sex to try and get good grades and things like that, which apparently he would always decline. He had girlfriends that he chatted to online. I think when we first met, his figure was 200. He had 200 girlfriends. Whether or not these were just girls online that he'd added on Facebook and MSN and Yahoo, who knows? But according to him, he had 200 girlfriends. Even after we were married, he still had girls that he would chat to in Pakistan. Even though we were married, he never broke it off with his girlfriends in Pakistan. So the triangulation in this situation was the fact that he was bringing in other women to make me feel jealous. So he'd constantly make me feel insecure by telling me how wherever he goes, girls are flocking at his feet. So basically, he is so gorgeous and so invaluable that he can just go anywhere and get a girl. He'd tell me about relationships that he could have had if he hadn't got married to me, because his brother knew people in the UK with daughters that they wanted him to get married to. There was an imam's daughter, there was somebody else, lots of young girls that he could have chosen, but he chose me. So there was always this sense of me feeling gratitude towards him and feeling like, I feel so blessed to have him because he's chosen me over all these other girls. A good looking young guy, really fair skin, green eyes. He could have had anybody, but he chose me. I was a divorcee with 2 children. I'm 4 years older than him. So he always implied that I have to be grateful for it. And I think I may have mentioned this before, that it took him about 5 years to actually tell me that he thought I was attractive. For 5 years, I never ever thought that I was attractive, because he would always tell me that he married me because I'm a loving, caring person, and he loves the fact that I look after him so well, that I'm so caring and considerate and empathetic and compassionate. Like, go out of my way to, to every minute detail, his clothes, his food, his, everything I would take care of for him. And he just constantly made me feel insecure, and this constantly, like when we got into this relationship, I didn't feel jealousy, I didn't feel insecure, I trusted him 100%, and he made me believe, to begin with, that he had never ever fallen in love, he'd never had a relationship before, and I was the love of his life. Soon I realised this was all lies, because he left himself logged on one day, and I saw on his MSN he had a whole file of chats that he'd saved with his girlfriend that he loves to bits. I expect he still loves her, apparently, I don't know, but he'd saved all her chat and he hadn't deleted it, and I spent the whole night reading the chat, and to me it was really endearing, it was lovely. I love romance, I love love stories, to be able to read a true life story, of my husband that I have fallen in love with, that I love to bits, and he's got this love story on his MSN that he's saved. I mean, it was adorable, it was so sweet, and I sort of said, well, you said you'd never been in love, but there's this girl, and then he told me the story about how he met her and things. But there was always this triangulation going on throughout the 10 years that I was married to him. There was always triangulation in every aspect. He'd go to work and he'd say the girls are really hands-on at work, they're hugging him, and they're love, kiss, all this stuff. There was always, so I always felt insecure. I knew that I was 4 years older than him, that he was a good-looking guy, that he would get attention. The thing is that I'm an attractive woman, so I get attention wherever I go. Every workplace I've been in, every place I've been, I do get male attention. But to me, for some reason, I never thought I was worthy. I never thought I was good enough, because that's how he made me feel. He always made me feel insecure. He always made me feel jealous. And then if I exhibit any of those insecurities, or feel jealous, or react in that way, then he makes it sound like I'm completely unstable and completely out of order for feeling jealous. Even when he was chatting online to girls after our marriage, he was still in contact with his girlfriends in Pakistan. His girlfriends were sending Valentine's messages. He was adding girls. He was going to his friends' pages to talk to girls. He was going to other groups and pages to chat to girls. There was, on his Facebook Messenger, he'd added a couple of his colleagues, young girls, that he had clearly stated that he found attractive, and these were attractive young girls that he worked with, and he'd added them or said hello to them and tried to chat to them and things. There were deleted messages where I'd just catch the ending of a conversation where he deleted everything else, and there was just one last message that he had forgotten to delete. I was in hospital with having a baby, or I was ill, or upstairs in bed, and there were conversations that he'd be having downstairs. He'd be chatting away on his laptop. I didn't know who he was chatting to. I didn't even know what he was doing, because he's very, very good at poker face. Like, you can't tell looking at him what he's doing, what he's saying, how he's feeling, whereas I'm very expressive. Like, if I'm happy, if I'm sad, if I'm angry, it shows in my face, it shows in my eyes, it shows in my behavior. He's very, very good at acting and manipulating. So I could never tell what he was up to when he was on his laptop, because he was facing away from me, like he was facing towards me, so I couldn't see the laptop. and little by little I found out that he was chatting to girls, he was watching porn. Well, I'm sat there on the sofa next to him, but he'd be doing whatever he wanted, but all the while maintaining that he's an amazing guy, that he's faithful to me, that he's, you know, I'm the love of his life, and that he you know, he loves me to bits. And he didn't just marry me for a visa. He married me because he loved me. Right. Okay. Codependency. I think with abuse victims, it's said that abuse victims become very codependent on other people because we are very insecure and we need other people to fulfill us. We feel not good enough, and we feel that we are not enough for anybody, for ourselves, for anybody else. So as abuse victims, we tend to attach ourselves to people. And I find in my relationships, not just with love interests, but with friendships, with family, anybody, like I'm very, very sociable and very friendly with people. So I can get on with anybody. I can make good friends with anybody. You know, people love to talk to me. People love to get to know me, and I love to get to know people. But I do become so attached that almost, you know, they become my whole life. So it's almost like my life starts revolving around other people. And I found that with, say, for example, my second covert husband, that my life revolved around him. Even my children came second fiddle to him. When I fell in love with him, when I married him, when he came into our house, everything revolved around him. His dietary preferences, what he wanted to eat, it was all about what he wanted to eat, what time he wanted to eat, how he wanted to eat. You know, he preferred roti, so we would eat roti instead of rice. Whereas as a Bengalis tend to eat rice, but Pakistanis tend to eat roti. So for him, I would accommodate. I'd get paratha, I'd get roti, and we tend to eat what he liked. So the cooking that he liked, you know, he didn't like meat much, whereas I love meat. I love minced meat, and I love meat. But because he didn't like it, we barely have meat. You know, he doesn't like the smell. He says it smells with meat and minced meat, so he wouldn't like it. It's not that he ever said to me, don't cook it. But they are so manipulative. They know exactly how to make you do exactly what they want without actually telling you to do that. And it's just their wording, the way they manipulate things, the way they manipulate you, and they make you do exactly what they want you to do. And you don't even realize it's happening to you. So whatever, you know, I was so codependent on him that if he was in a bad mood and if he was angry with me, it felt like my whole world had fallen apart. I remember my friend actually saying that to me last year during the coronavirus pandemic when I was ill and when he was being really abusive to me. As soon as he became angry with me, and, you know, it just felt like my life had ended. You know, I was willing to go and jump off a bridge. I was willing to take an overdose. I was willing to end my life because I didn't understand how I could live without this person. That if he was angry and upset with me, if he wasn't in my life, if he wasn't my husband, how could I cope? How could I live? How could I go on? You know, my life was him. You know, I woke up when he wanted to wake up. I'd go to sleep when he wanted me to go to sleep. There were times, obviously, I struggled to sleep. I was, you know, when I'm stressed, when I'm anxious, when I'm depressed, I can't always go to sleep. I go to bed and I can't stay asleep. But on the whole, our bedtime routine was around his choice. What we watched on TV was around his choice. You know, when we first got married, it was all about politics, Pakistani politics that I absolutely hated. And item songs. He was just obsessed watching item songs and half-naked women prancing about on the TV, which I absolutely hated, especially with, you know, grown up boys or young children or whatever. I didn't want them to watch these kind of things, but he would, you know, he'd always insist on watching it. And again, it was a bit of the triangulation thing going on there as well, with women on TV and in these item songs and things. You know, he made me feel inadequate, and he made me feel ugly and unlovable and unworthy. So watching these beautiful women on TV that he was drooling over, or he was, you know, sat there with his mouth open or staring at their bodies and things, it just reinforced the fact that I wasn't good enough. You know, he loved to watch these women instead. And I felt jealousy against actresses and models, you know, people on TV. It was absurd. It's like, how can you be jealous of a TV actress or somebody? But it's just the way narcissists make you feel and abusers make you feel that you are not good enough, that you are not like these thingy women. You know, and when we married, I was size 8, so I was very nice and slim, even though at the time I never thought I was that, you know, slim. I was not slim enough. I still felt like I had a bit of a tummy. I needed to have a flat tummy, which I could never ever have a flat tummy. But when I look back now and see that I was a size 8, you know, and I've put on at least 2 sizes now, that I had a great figure. You know, I would go out and I would get wolf whistled at. I would get men following me around. I would get men, you know, young boys, teenagers, young adults, you know, even when I was 30, 35, people lusting after me, people showing attention, giving me attention. So I was an attractive thing. I still am. I would say I still am an attractive woman. And yet he made me feel so ugly and so unworthy of his love and his attention and his affection. And I think that will then move on to the trauma bonds that we feel. I think codependency does come hand in hand with trauma bonds, because we develop trauma bonds with our abusers, which is a bit similar to Stockholm syndrome. So we fall in love with our abusers because of the way they show their love. So when we've grown up in an abusive environment with domestic violence, with child abuse, we've only been given breadcrumbs of love. So when we grow up as adults and we fall in love with yet another abuser, because the cycle just continues, you know, it's almost like you can't break out of the cycle, you're stuck in the cycle, so it will just continue. So we fall for people who are abusive because they make us believe that they love us, and they give us breadcrumbs of love. So they'll give us little bits of love, almost like what I say is a fruit machine at the arcade. So you get a payout and then nothing, and then you're putting money in, putting in. You know it's going to come, you know it's going to be great when it comes, and you just want, it's the buzz of waiting for that. You know, it's going to come any minute now. You're just going to keep trying. So with the trauma bond, we are so bonded to our abusers and the narcissists that we keep trying. You know, we know they are capable of love. They have given us love in the past. And we know that when they give it, it's amazing. You know, we love it. A lot of people say that, you know, the physical side of a relationship, the intimate side of a relationship is amazing for them. And then there's the question is it really that amazing, or is it because we feel that that's the only way that we can actually have their love? And for example, for myself, you know, I need affection. I need someone to hug me, to hold me, to reassure me, to show me their love and show me that, you know, I mean something to them. So for me, intimacy always was the only way that I could have that from him, because he just was not intimate at all. He was not affectionate at all. No hugs, no reassurance. It was always very, very scarce, you know. So the only way that I got that from him was through intimacy. So they, you know, this is the way they trauma bond their victim to themselves, by giving them these snippets of love, or, you know, the gift. You know, when they feel like you're pulling away from them, they will hoover you back. And hoovering back is when, say, you've realised that they're abusive, and you think, well, this person's abusing me, you know, why am I with this person? So you start to pull back, and you start to realise, and you start to cotton on that actually this isn't right for me. I shouldn't be in this relationship, and this person isn't right for me, and this person is a bit crazy, to be honest. So all of a sudden they realise that you're pulling back. They realise that you might cotton on, that they're actually abusing you. So they start love bombing you. They start showing you all this affection and all this love. They love you. They can't live without you. You know, you're the only person for them. They love you to bits. You know, they can't bear to lose you. You know, so all of a sudden they're amazing. They're this amazing person that you think, oh gosh, maybe I got it wrong. And you start second guessing yourself. You start thinking, oh, maybe I got it wrong. Maybe it's not as bad as I think. Maybe they're fine, you know, or maybe they've changed. They've learnt. You know, just a week ago they were beating the crap out of us, or swearing at us, or humiliating us, but maybe they've changed in a week. They've realised that was unacceptable behaviour. So we start questioning ourselves, and we start believing it. And it's the idealisation that we want to have them like this all the time. We want them to love us. We want them to show us affection. So we start believing it. We start wishing it. We start hoping that they've changed and that this is them changing. So we take them back. We give them another chance. And it doesn't even have to be in love interest relationships. I've noticed with, say, parent and child relationships, it's exactly the same. You know, as soon as I started pulling away from my parent, and she realised that, you know, I didn't want to see her, I didn't want to speak to her, I didn't want to go to her house. She would start love bombing me, and it's almost like she's an amazing mother. You know, she will send me gifts, she'll try and give me money, she'll try and be amazing with my kids, she'll try and get all my sisters and my brother to message me and to, you know, to persuade me and pressure me to go back and see her and go to her house. And they'd be like, why aren't you going round? Why don't you take your kids round? You know, your kids, at least let your kids go round, or come round, or it's Eid, or any excuse just to hoover me back. And they hoover you back, and you don't even realise half the time that you're being hoovered back. You know, you could feel like, oh God, they've changed. Oh God, they've suddenly accepted me. And because we're so desperate for them to love us and for them to accept us, any little indication that perhaps they do, perhaps they've accepted us and loved us, we fly with it. We love it. We fly with it. Because we're so, we're so eager to see that change in them. We're so eager for them to accept us, for them to realise what they're doing to us. So, you know, it only takes a snippet, and bam, you're back in that cycle. And the cycle of abuse is so difficult to break, because victims are stuck in this cycle almost from birth. So if I look at my own life, I have been stuck in an abusive cycle from birth. I was born into an abusive household where it was rife with domestic violence. My father was often beating my mother, or shouting, or swearing, or humiliating her. He had suffered with depression and certain issues. And he wanted a son. And when he kept getting daughters one after another, there was a lot of domestic violence. So I remember as a child, my mother would, you know, she'd run out the door, and I'd be like a 3, 4-year-old child running after her, bringing her back, saying, please don't leave us, Mum, please don't leave us, come back, come back. So to be born in that cycle, and so with abuse victims, we are constantly in a state of fight and flight, or freezes. You know, there's 7 trauma responses, but the main ones are fight and flight. So because we know that at any moment now, anything can happen, anything can go down, a fight could break out, argument, shouting, swearing, hitting, you know, we could be in danger. So we are in constant heightened state. And to be in a constant heightened state, it has so much physical effects on our body. You know, our body's constantly flooded with hormones. You know, we're constantly flooded with adrenaline, because we could have to leap out of danger at any point now. You know, we need to be prepared for this. We're scanning, we're watching, we're looking to see what's happening. You know, who's saying what, how they're behaving, what's their body language, you know, what's their pitch of voice and volume. Because at any given moment, we might have to jump out of the way, we might have to run, we might have to save ourselves, we might have to hide, we might have to fight back. So children who grow up in abusive and domestic violence are just completely, their whole physiology and their biology and their chemistry and their psychology is changed and adapted. And it's like animals who adapt to their environment. We've had to adapt to our environment. So quite often we have, and I know I've found this issue with anger. Like, you know, we can go from 0 to 100 at a split moment, and things trigger us, and we just lose it, and we don't understand why we lose it, and we just completely lose it. The reason we lose it is because we are so used to going from 0 to 100, because we've had to protect ourselves. Like, it's the only way we've been able to protect ourselves. So our brain just becomes wired in that way that it will lose sense of reality, and anything that we perceive as a danger, sometimes it's not even a proper danger, but we perceive that as a danger or a threat, we will go from 0 to 100, you know, and almost like animals big themselves up. We will big ourselves up to protect ourselves, or we do the opposite, and we flee and we cower, and we freeze in a corner, and we just sat there shaking or shivering or freezing, or accepting the abuse, or accepting the physical abuse, or whatever it is that they're throwing at us, because that's how we've had to adapt, and that's how we have had to survive in these cycles of abuse, and we've become the way we are as a result of the abuse that we've suffered. You know, people like my siblings have said to me that I'm crazy, that I'm unstable, that, you know, because I get angry, or I get upset, or I get triggered, or, you know, or I'm such a hypersensitive, I'm oversensitive about things. I've had to be like this. I've had to make myself cope with the situations that I've been in. You know, as a 15-year-old girl or a 14-year-old girl, when I had to pick the coffee table up to threaten my sister because she wouldn't stop bullying me, And it was the only way that I could get her to back off, because she wouldn't listen, because I'm younger by 6 years to her. So to get her to back off and to stop bullying me, that was the only way. And I think it was that particular moment that I realised that there's nobody here to protect me. There's nobody to stand up for me. There's nobody to talk for me. I have to do it for myself. Unless I do it, nobody else will do it. And either I sit here and take the abuse, I take the bullying, I take the humiliation, the physical beatings, the verbal abuse, or I do something about it. And I decided to do something about it. So I became the tough tomboy. I became the I'm not going to take any of your nonsense. To the point that, if I perceive a danger, even when there isn't a danger, if I perceive someone is criticizing me, someone is hurting me, someone is bullying me or humiliating me, I will get angry. And it's like a flip switch. I can get angry from 0 to 100 at a flip switch. I'm training myself, and I think I've come a long way in the last few months where I've trained myself not to do that, and not to perceive danger and everything, and try and analyze situations a bit more, and try and think logically as opposed to just reacting physically, because it's like a reflex action. It becomes a reflex action where, just like blinking and anything else that we do as a reflex action automatically without thinking, getting into an angry mode becomes a reflex action for us to protect ourselves and to preserve ourselves, because we have had to adapt because of our environments. And often I'll tell victims that if they have children, that they need to get out of these abusive relationships, because they're harming their children. They are setting their children up for failure. Their children will be a repeat of them. So if they are suffering in domestic violence, they're struggling, they've got health problems, they've got emotional problems, they've got psychological problems, they're suffering depression and PTSD, their children will be them in 10, 15, 20 years' time. It will be their children that are suffering. So you need to get out of these abusive relationships. You need to strengthen your resolve and boost yourself up and boost your self-confidence and self-esteem. You need to get help. You need to increase your social circles. You need to reach out to people who you can trust, people who will be there for you, who will look after you. You need to reach out to other people and get as much help as you can and support as you can. You need to educate yourself. You need to learn about these relationships, about abuse and narcissism, and the way that they affect us, the different terminology that people use. How do these things affect us? How do these people affect us? How do they control us and manipulate us? How do they get us to do exactly what they want? With just a look, with just a word, we can be triggered. And a trigger is something that affects us, because it reminds us of a situation that we've been in that's been really hurtful to us or really harmful to us. So for me, like, cooking can be a trigger, because my mother and my sisters have always humiliated me about cooking. So until recently, I couldn't cook properly. I could cook, I knew how to cook, but I did it out of an obligation that I had to cook. I didn't have a choice about it. I never enjoyed my cooking. I never wanted to do extra than I had to. I would always do the bare minimum. I would never offer to cook for anybody else. I'd never offer to host dinner parties. And if anything, I just got so anxious and worried and upset if anybody suggested it, because it triggered me. It triggered the memories of my mother humiliating me and laughing at me and laughing at my cooking, and my sisters. And even up until recently, even up until 2 years ago, I'd say, I was being humiliated about my cooking. I was being laughed at and mocked at about my cooking. And yet, when I go in the kitchen now, I can rustle up 5, 6, 7 dishes without hardly any effort, I don't even check my cooking. I don't even taste my cooking. Occasionally I might forget the salt, but I don't tend to check it. I just cook it randomly. And when I'm enjoying it, I will try out different recipes, just improvise. I'll just stick in any vegetables that I can find, whatever I've got in my cupboard or in my fridge, and just try out new recipes. And on the whole, they turn out really well. I can cook. I am a good cook. But they made me believe that I wasn't. They made me believe that I was worthless and useless and just a mockery and just, somebody to laugh at and humiliate and bully.